been drinking wine. Diane was in the front passenger seat and Tex was in the back seat. When they got to downtown Atlanta on the connector, they hit traffic, so they took the Edgewood exit. As they got off the road, Tex was concerned about the neighborhood they were in, so he asked Diane to hand him his gun from the console. They continued driving up Piedmont Road, and somewhere between 12th and 14th Street, the gun went off. The bullet traveled through the front passenger seat and struck Diane. She died the next day at the hospital. Tex McIver says it was an accident, but prosecutors say it's murder. This is the trial of Tex McIver. Huge day inside the courtroom. The judge allowed the jury to take a look at the SUV and get inside the SUV, the same one that Tex McIver was in when he shot and killed his wife, Diane. No cameras were allowed there, but our photographer, Jefferson, was there as the jury was watching. Describe the scene for us.
All right, we're in a concrete sally port where they bring in prisoners.
What was the process? How did they do it?
The jurors went up one at a time. Each juror took about a minute and a half. Some jurors took as long as 2 minutes. Some got in all 4 doors. Some only got in 2 doors.
They were allowed to sit in each of the 4 seats.
Yes.
Any notable reaction from any of the jurors?
No, it just seemed like they were just looking at another car.
So now the jury clears out and then the media is allowed to examine the SUV?
Absolutely.
What struck you about what you saw inside?
Follow the dowel. Because of the placement of the armrest with the door closed, it would have been impossible for you to have the gun like this and match up with the dowel. But if you turned your hand either like this or the other way, laying it flat like this, either side, it matched up perfect.
The defense version and explanation of how that gun had to be was consistent with your own examination of the scene.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw the whole thing. Yeah, it was perfect.
What happens next if Tex McIver is found guilty? If Tex McIver is found guilty, the first thing that would happen in the courtroom is a decision about whether or not his bond gets revoked, because he's facing life in prison either with or without parole. So at that point, where does Tex McIver go? Pending his sentencing, pending his appeal. That's where the legal battle will be between the defense and the prosecution. Obviously, prosecutors will want him locked up immediately, and the defense will do whatever they can. On Sunday, September 25th, 2016, Tex McIver spent the day golfing with his wife, Diane. Afterwards, they went back to their ranch home in Putnam County, where Diane's friend Danny Jo Carter was spending the weekend with them. At the end of the day, all three headed back to Atlanta in the McIver's SUV. Danny Jo was driving because Diane and Tex had been drinking wine. Diane was in the front passenger seat and Tex was in the back seat. When they got to downtown Atlanta on the connector, they hit traffic, so they took the Edgewood exit. As they got off the road, Tex was concerned about the neighborhood they were in, so he asked Diane to hand him his gun from the console. They continued driving up Piedmont Road, and somewhere between 12th and 14th Street, the gun went off. The bullet traveled through the front passenger seat and struck Diane. She died the next day at the hospital. Tex McIver says it was an accident, but prosecutors say it's murder. This is the trial of Tex McIver. Huge day inside the courtroom. The judge allowed the jury to take a look at the SUV and get inside the SUV, the same one that Tex McIver was in when he shot and killed his wife, Diane. No cameras were allowed there, but our photographer, Jefferson, was there as the jury was watching. Describe the scene for us.
All right, we're in a concrete sally port where They bring in prisoners.
What was the process? How did they do it?
The jurors went up one at a time. Each juror took about a minute and a half. Some jurors took as long as 2 minutes. Some got in all 4 doors. Some only got in 2 doors.
They were allowed to sit in each of the 4 seats.
Yes.
Any notable reaction from any of the jurors?
No, it just seemed like they were just looking at another car.
So now the jury clears out and then the media is allowed to examine the SUV?
Absolutely.
What struck you about what you saw inside?
Follow the dowel. Because of the placement of the armrest with the door closed, it would have been impossible for you to have the gun like this and match up with the dowel. But if you turned your hand either like this or the other way, laying it flat like this, either side, it matched up perfect.
The defense version and explanation of how that gun had to be was consistent with your own examination of the scene.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw the whole thing. Yeah, it was perfect.
What happens next if Tex McIver is found guilty? If Tex McIver is found guilty, the first thing that would happen in the courtroom is a decision about whether or not his bond gets revoked, because he's facing life in prison either with or without parole. So at that point, where does Tex McIver go? Pending his sentencing, pending his appeal. That's where the legal battle will be between the defense and the prosecution. Obviously, prosecutors will want him locked up immediately, and the defense will do whatever they can to try to keep him out until sentencing and then keep him out until the appeal is heard. Both of those very unlikely. What happens next if Tex McIver is found not guilty? Game over for prosecutors. Tex McIver will walk out of that courtroom a free man and will never be able to be charged with those counts, with those allegations ever again. Jeopardy attaches. You can't try the same person twice for the same crime. Tex McIver will be free. What are the possible outcomes for Tex McIver? Well, you got to go to the indictment and take a look at all of the charges, because they can be guilty or not guilty on all of them with different sentences. Count 1, murder, guilty, life with or without the possibility of parole. If he's found not guilty, the jury can still consider involuntary manslaughter, which is 1 to 10 years. Count 2, felony murder, same sentence as malice murder, life in prison with or without the possibility of parole. Count 3, aggravated assault. That's 1 to 20 years if he's found guilty. Count 4, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. That is 5 years mandatory, running consecutively to whatever felony he's found guilty of. And count 5, witness tampering. That is 2 to 10 years in prison. So if Tex McIver is found not guilty of murder, that's just the beginning of the story.
Remember the expert from the crime lab demonstrating the weapon and pulling the trigger?
Notice the trigger.
Oops, he's demonstrating it for you on the witness stand. He accidentally pulls the trigger. He says, oops. The auction. Not 1 fur for sentimental value. He's prancing up and down talking about the furs for sentimental value. Speculation. There must have been a second will. Speculation. She must have been getting ready to foreclose on the $350,000. Speculation. They must have been arguing in private. If Mr. Rucker can convince you to speculate about 20 or 30 different things, none of which we've heard any evidence about, then we lose. We are going to vilify Tex McIver. He acted irrationally after his wife died. He was worried about money. He lacks social skills. He looks at another woman. He gets a massage. He's not sentimental about her jewelry and her furs. Because of all those things, by golly, you should feel comfortable finding him guilty of murder.
He wants you to believe that it was an accident. He doesn't really know that much about guns. So he told the police department, I ain't fired that gun in, woo, so long. It was just, it was just on my lap. I was handling it. And it just went off. And you know that he says to a reporter, guns are not my thing. Did y'all see all them guns? I had it here on the table. And all them different revolvers that are just like the gun he used to shoot and kill his wife. Why would he lie about that? It's because he is guilty. He is guilty. Carl, who will stand for the little girl? Who will stand for the little girl who is now dead? Who will stand for the little girl who came from humble means? Who will stand for the little girl who fulfilled all of her dreams? Who will stand for Diane McIver? She knew, who came from humble means. Who will
We'll just go live. We'll do it live.
All right, folks.
Oh,
Good evening.
oh, live. Sorry.
Do it live. Hey, how are you? Are we on? We're on. We're on? We are on. I think we're on.
I think so too.
I think so too. Do you see me? Do you see me? I don't see myself either.
Yeah, I see you.
You see me?
Yes, we're on
All
live.
right.
I'm trying to follow too. I'm on
What
here.
a day.
Woo!
Welcome to Late Fee Law, day 3 of deliberation. Still no.
Just go
There we
live.
go.
This is the beauty of Facebook Live.
There we go. I got it. You got it. I did it already. I got it.
That's what's awesome about Facebook Live. You don't even know what's going to happen.
The situation's under control. We had a slight technical difficulty with the video on the way in. Hey, listen, folks. So, day 3 of deliberations. They started Tuesday, short deliberations that day. Wednesday, no verdict. Thursday, no verdict. But the real story today goes back more than 24 hours ago. And this jury sent out a note that said, if we find him guilty or not guilty of counts 1 through 4, can we find him guilty of count 5? And we were like, OMG. Goodness. Oh my goodness. Does this mean that they have reached a verdict and they're like this close and there's going to be a verdict on Thursday? Well, we found out that wasn't necessarily the case, and a lot of things happened today. But let me first introduce my dream team tonight, legal dream team: Mo Ivory, defense attorney, and LaTonya Hines, prosecutor. First, I need your reaction to the fact that we did not get a verdict today, because when I was sending emails out last night, Mo sent me an email, I'll be there tomorrow for the verdict. That verdict didn't happen, Mo.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you surprised?
No. So after, I did think it was going to be today, and then when I heard that when I saw the proceedings going on today, that they were allowing them to go to the car with the gun, then I knew today it wasn't going to happen, because they were going to have that experience, and then they're going to come back and talk about it. They're all going to go to sleep tonight, and it's going to happen tomorrow morning. They've already asked to be dismissed tomorrow by 4, which means they have the whole day to come in the morning, give their not guilty verdict, decide, get instructions on how to proceed from then, and then go home for a nice Friday afternoon.
Were you shocked?
So yesterday threw me totally off when
Yes.
they came back with that question. But what I kept saying, which is the point that I wanted to make, which is even though they came back with those questions, when the judge asked them, when he told him his answer, they still wanted to go into the car. They still wanted to go in the car with the gun. And that showed me that the prosecution still had something going with the jury. Somebody on there might be undecided on guilt or not guilty.
Yeah.
And so that's a great thing for the prosecution, because that means that this case continues on and they're not going to go ahead and do their verdict. Anytime a jury comes back really quickly, usually it's not a good sign for the prosecution.
But also, it could be that 1 or 2 jurors that just need one more thing to feel comfortable with a not guilty verdict. And so maybe the other jurors are saying, listen, this is how we feel about what happened in the car. And so let us go to the car so that you can see it for yourself, that it was in fact an accident, and they have to get comfortable with it. It's hard hard to know if the visit to the car was going to be something that is great for the prosecution or great for the defense. But I have to say, I'm still leaning on that question. If we find him not guilty on 1 to 4, which are the most important, things he needs to be found not guilty on, I mean, that's a huge, huge question.
It's a huge question, but I love the way today played out if you're a prosecutor. Because the way that it played out, the first thing they did was they watched that interview.
They did.
They watched the APD interview with Tex McIver. And that's where he told them what happened. So it's fresh in their minds, his words about what happened and the scenario before they go downstairs and maybe try it out for themselves to see if it made sense.
And remember, we're talking about like human beings, right? With same rationale as you would have, that I would have. They want to touch and feel. They want to be sure. This is either send a man to prison for the rest of his life, or or maybe 10 years, or whatever it would be, and they want to be 100% sure. That still doesn't mean that the burden has been met.
Now, we get a lot of comments about your outfits tonight. Everyone's
I
loving the
know.
colors.
Yes.
Dorothy, Lauren, everyone.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
so they're kind of like the inverse. Like prosecution
Yes.
is the black with the pink.
Yeah.
And the defense is the pink with the black.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, good, good. All right. So you mentioned a lot of things here and a lot of things that happened today. So let's start first with the interrogation video. In that interrogation video, he tells a story, right? It's one of the stories. Is that a good story for Tex McIver in that interrogation video? That I'm handling the gun and it just goes off?
Yeah, well, okay, so I mean, that's, again, we never got a chance to get Tex on the stand, so we can only go from
Right, but is that a good story? I'm handling the gun?
Well,
handling the gun means the gun's in your hand, right?
well, I think we know it was in his hand.
Do we?
I mean, I don't
All I hear is
necessarily.
it was on my lap and it went off.
Okay, so that's all right. So
And
that's
was your
an
hand inside the
accident.
bag? Was it cocked back? Single action versus double action? All of those things. I tell you though, it's a really tricky move. I really admire Judge McBurney. He has been very avant-garde in a sense in doing this trial, and to be able to allow them to go down there.
Right.
They're sitting in the car, and what I find to be interesting, with it closed, and I think they're going back over what Bruce Harvey kept harping on about if your elbow was out, you wouldn't be able to do certain things, you wouldn't be able to do certain movements, and I think they tried that out for themselves.
Let me ask you
They
this about
certainly
the other
did.
thing about the view today, is that they were going in 2 at a time. One in the driver's seat, one in Tex McIver's seat. So what does that tell us? Are they questioning Danny Jo what she could or could not see from the driver's seat?
They possibly
And
could have
if
been
so,
doing that.
who does that help? Who does that hurt?
They possibly could have been doing that, and I think that definitely hurts Tex McIver if they were doing that.
If they're questioning Danny Jo's testimony?
Well, I think if they're questioning Danny Jo's credibility, Danny Jo seems like a very credible witness for
So why
the
would you want to
prosecution.
get? But I mean, and we have witnesses who saw this. People sitting in the driver's seat and looking back and looking in the rearview mirror. To me, that sends a signal like, hey, what exactly could Danny Jo see?
Well,
should we trust her testimony?
And remember what Bruce Harvey said, right? He said that everybody said that Tex was asleep, right?
Right.
What did she actually see? Maybe that's what they're wondering about. Did she actually see him
Could
being
she?
asleep right before this actually happened?
I think that's possible. Or they could have just wanted to see what it felt like to be in the car. What was her trajectory from, turning this way? I think I don't think you can really know whether it was for.
Of course we can.
She was a credible witness.
She was a very
credible witness in the fact that she didn't try to seem too for the prosecution or too for the defense. Like Annie was definitely a defense witness.
Yeah,
all the
absolutely.
way from the way that she looked to everything.
Sure.
But the way that Danny Jo came across, she just came across like, I'm trying to kind of remember what happened. This is what I remembered to have
But
happened.
her testimony was very specific about turning and seeing the smoke and seeing the hand in the gun and him kind of going like this with the other hand. And then if you're checking the rearview mirror, I think that goes to the sleeping. Like you're driving, you're always sort of checking your rearview mirror. Would you be able to see Tex McIver in that rearview mirror?
I hope
think
they
is an
don't get
obvious
into the
question.
weeds, though. I hope they don't get into the weeds with regard to her, because I really think of Danny Jo like the ear witness. I don't think she really saw all that much of anything based off of her testimony. Nothing that was truly going to tell you whether or not he did this intentionally or truly an accident.
Sure. I don't think we have that they're in the weeds, because I think they had two
There
very...
she is. There she is.
Yeah.
She's in court right there. You can see her sitting behind the DA and next to Jay. I'm trying to remember his last name. Jay Grover, who was a strong witness for the prosecution with the Boots witness. So she is behind the prosecution in this case, no doubt. At this point, it's clear to me just by where she's sitting in the courtroom.
Sure. But what you said about getting in the weeds, I think that they have been, you know, in the last couple of days in the weeds. But yesterday, then when they emerged with the two questions and were very specific about wanting to get into the car with the gun, I think they were at their last final issues. So whether to know, I personally think that that means that they're coming back with a not guilty verdict, but we don't know. They could be down to these two issues, which could be totally a question of guilt versus a question of non-guilty. We don't know.
And Claudia says, Tex said twilight sleep in his interview. But what is that? What is that? What does that mean, twilight sleep? What is that?
Is
that like I'm asleep but I'm not asleep?
I don't know. It's like dawn sleep. It's a deep...
I don't know what that is.
You know what that is? That's what Bruce Harvey and them said is a red herring. Something to throw you away from the fact of common sense that if you were so scared that you would have your gun cocked and just fall asleep in this scary area of Edgewood during a Black Lives Matter protest. Red herring. That's what the twilight sleep is.
Or, you know, you could have been drinking a whole bottle of wine, which we saw the bottle of wine right back there in the car seat, and, you know, an older man, sleep, you know, disorders, and, you know, can easily fall asleep. I've seen my husband, other men fall asleep in 1 second flat. So
with
let's
the gun?
not
When they're scared?
No, not with
the gun when they're scared.
Not in our
when they're
SUV.
protecting
Not
us?
our SUV.
Oh, I'm just checking. Just checking.
SUV.
Now.
All right, Joe's asking, were they allowed to use the gun today? Yeah, that gun was with the jury in the SUV. And again, they matched up in pairs of two. Would go in at a time, sitting in the two locations, and the person in the back seat would have the gun each and every time as they did that. Carol, no press was allowed. Well, here's what happened with the media. The media, and this was interesting the way it played out, because we talked about this last night on the show, was whether or not this would be a traditional jury view, or because they were in the middle of deliberations, whether they would deliberate while they were down there looking at the car as a piece of evidence, which it is at this point. And the judge wanted to do that, but the only way they can deliberate is if they're all by themselves. There can't be anyone else there, and it was impossible to put them in that sally port without a sheriff's deputy there. So in the end, everyone was there. The media was there, prosecutors were there, defense was there, Tex McIver was there, and then the 12 jurors were there all at the same time, again, in pairs of two, going around and taking a look at the car today. So, do we think that there is an absolute split at this point, that it's not a matter of we wanted to see the car to confirm something, to feel better about what we had already decided? It's that there is some holdout from the majority here, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know. But do we think that's what's going on right now?
It had, because of how today played out, especially with them watching that video first, which is getting Tex's words, because that's the only words that they've got outside of his jailhouse interviews about what truly happened, and then them going down into the car itself, it made me think that involuntary manslaughter is still there. I think it's still there. I don't know about malice murder, especially with those questions yesterday, but for them to still be thinking and wanting to hear his words about what happened, and they want to try it for themselves, I think that, because involuntary manslaughter, right? It's a recklessness, right?
Yeah.
And I think the state made their case definitely, without a doubt, for that. It'd be very shocking to me if they don't get that charge.
That's interesting. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a holdout. I think that they wouldn't have asked that question about the 1 to 4, you know, and keep 5 if they weren't. I think they want to charge him with something. You know, I think that they want to find Tex guilty of something, and they're trying to give whoever is holding out, or how many are holding out, they want to be able to give them something, because a lot of people just don't like him, and they want to.
Got some breaking news, folks. We had a request, and we had the video, but we couldn't play it. I know we don't have a microphone for you, so you got to be real close to
Stand between the girls.
Yeah, stand right between the girls. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Ann. She is one of our producers here.
This is great. The blue.
And you, exactly, matching up. And you were there when this jury was taking a look. Tell the folks what you saw and if you heard anything.
Right. Okay. So the jurors came one by one, and well, I guess in pairs, because one of them would come up and get into the driver's seat of the SUV. The other one would go into the back passenger side seat where Tex would have been sitting, and the juror, whichever juror got into the back seat, they also had the gun, the actual gun that was used. And so they would, you know, position themselves there and probably stay like 30 seconds each. And the people who were in the driver's seat, some of them would look behind them.
Yeah.
Some of them I could see looking up into the rear view mirror. So it was really interesting to watch. And
So about 30 seconds. So they were only there for what, 15, 20 minutes today?
yeah, I think altogether 25 minutes.
And again, everyone was there, right? So it wasn't the jurors by themselves, prosecutor, defense, media, all there at once.
Oh yeah, it was media, we were there, all of the jurors, prosecution, defense, Judge McBurney, some sheriff's deputies.
Court reporter?
Yes, she was down there.
So, and you also sat in the back seat.
I did, yes.
Well, tell me, you know, what was that like?
Well, it was really eerie sitting there and just like looking forward, looking into the front seat, and the bullet hole is right there, and you know, I just once you got in, you know, you could close the door, and so I closed the door and kind of tried to, you know, see if I could position.
And what'd you find?
hand.
You're about Texas size.
No, I'm not. It was hard. So I tried my own experiment, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. But I heard like some of the men who were more around Texas size, they said that they felt kind of cramped and that it was hard to like move around. So
That's interesting.
Interesting. Anything else that you noticed today that you think the folks at home should know about?
I noticed that the inside of the car looked really clean. And someone had said that I think Tex got the car back.
You got it back, yeah. You got it clean. You definitely
Right,
got it
right. So you could definitely tell, yeah.
He probably wants to sell it.
Because
That's my guess. All right. Well, Ann, let me see if there's any questions for Ann. Does anyone have questions for Ann?
Were you inside of the courtroom today?
I was in the media room.
I just wanted to know, I saw that Annie Anderson was there, and once again, seated on that side that's closest in that middle pew area towards Tex. Did you see the assistant? Was he there today? Could you tell?
Oh, Terry Brown.
Yeah.
I didn't notice. I don't know, tomorrow I'll pay more attention.
And I know Danny Joe was there.
Mr. Corey was there. Jay Grover was there. I think that's all I can remember.
Joe is asking, Ann, do you think, oh wait, it's going so fast here. Ann, do you think it will confuse the jurors? Do you think being in there will confuse them? Because you've watched this whole trial and seen the testimony and the evidence. Do you think does it give you more clarity about what happened, or does it make things even murkier? That's a great question, by the way, Joe.
Yeah.
I could see it, like if someone like me, like, because I couldn't really get in there, and I felt like I couldn't really get a good idea of exactly what the conditions were like. I could see how that it could maybe make it more murky.
Did you try? Lauren Katie says, did you try the arm by the side? Did you try your arm by the side? What did you?
I mean, I was able to rest my arm up on the side.
And then how far away were you from the back of the seat at that point?
I mean, I felt like it could, and this is just me, I felt like it would still be possible.
You could still line up.
Yes.
And what was the mood? What did you feel like was the mood of the jurors as they were holding the guns, especially the ones in the back seat, like when they would get out the car after the 30 seconds? What was sort of their reaction?
Well, it was my impression that they had really like talked about this, and they had specific things that they were looking for when they were doing that. And especially like the first two jurors that came and got in, they were like walking with purpose.
Did they take notes or anything with them down there?
Yes. I saw a few of them taking notes, and you know, some stayed longer than others. So I'm pretty sure there were some who there were like specific things that they were hoping this would clear up.
I tell you what, though, this is very interesting to me.
This is very interesting.
Especially the fact that they're doing this vantage point of Danny Joe.
Yeah.
Is it more now that this testimony that seems like it didn't necessarily benefit either their side, very credible? What are they thinking about Danny Joe's testimony right now? Are they thinking to themselves, there's no way that certain things would have been the way she said? Or, you know, that's very interesting.
They're either confirming something that they feel about what happened in that backseat and what Danny Joe testified to, or they're negating something that they continue to argue about in the deliberations, and there's one or two or however many holdouts on that issue. So that's really what is the big question. What is in those notes and what they're trying to confirm or disprove.
Another question, did you hear anything? Did the jurors speak to each other at all? Could you hear anything in that sally port?
No, I mean, we were far enough away to where I couldn't hear them. I mean, I did see some of them talking to each other, but it was far enough away to where I couldn't hear it.
Interesting.
Okay, the emails. Can somebody please help me again? The emails, there were some emails they wanted to see. Do we know what emails those were?
They gave him basically a stack like this that was in evidence. So.
I just wonder what emails. I wonder if it's the emails to Diane that Diane is sending about this money and kind of how she characterizes Tex.
Well, when he said he was coming to the office and she said, "Don't forget to bring a check," and you know, it could have been.
When Tex is saying like, "On what do we not agree?"
About the will.
Yeah,
yes.
they're talking
about the will.
Robin wants to know about the billboard, and people have been talking about this billboard today.
I believe is it the Courier people are supposed to be posting this billboard soon.
Well, here's what I found out today. The group that's doing it is the Reeves Group. And Reeves Media. I spoke with the president. I forgot her first name. Was it Pat? Pat Reeves? Whatever. I spoke with her, and she said they're not doing anything until after the verdict. They are there for Diane. They want her to be remembered. They love Diane. They're missing her so much. And they are on pins and needles waiting for this verdict.
Sure.
In the meantime, if they do, when they do put up these billboards, and she really didn't want to talk about it today, they're not doing anything until after.
Which is smart.
Well, there was a lot of. I live very close to Corey, and where that billboard is, I passed
the Corey Tower.
The Corey Tower.
Right. That was back in 2016.
Yes.
They kept it up there for quite some time.
And in 2016, when the day after the shooting, it was very hard to get down that street. There was a lot of stuff going on. She was obviously, we know, very beloved at her work establishment. So I wouldn't be surprised that somebody would do something again once the verdict comes
There's
down.
questions about this juror 61. Boy, juror
61, wasn't she? She was at the view. So was she the one that was circling a bunch of times?
Yeah, she was the last one to
the holdout.
You know, yeah, she was the last one to look at the SUV, and she circled it, and she like opened every door.
The holdout. The holdout.
And looked
and
she's
she's
the wild card.
She's the holdout.
Juror 61 is.
Come on.
Can you describe Juror 61? Like age, like what does she look like?
Okay, well she's probably like, I would guess like mid-20s, early 30s.
Oh, so she's a young one.
Yeah, and you know, she's probably my height.
Okay.
African American, so.
Young jurors are always interesting.
Oh yeah, you know they want to get into it all. They watch all these crime and drama shows.
Well, because then they really, because older jurors too get really
very involved.
But I tell you, this jury, except for maybe one gentleman that I saw in there, is very young, and I wouldn't really think of as being a peer of Tex McIver.
Yeah.
And I just find that very interesting.
All right, good job, Ann. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ann.
Folks at home, giving you a round of applause. Appreciate it.
I think Mo and I are thinking. Of maybe going to the courthouse tomorrow.
I think we might.
You gonna be there tomorrow? All right.
Good morning.
All right, time.
Is it time? That's
For a
Is
verdict.
it already?
Time for a verdict. We gotta keep rolling here. We gotta keep this moving. Gotta keep this train moving. Gotta keep this train moving. So, it's the third day of deliberations.
Yep.
We know what happened yesterday with the note, and today again no verdict. A couple other little pieces of information. They said they want to leave by 4 o'clock tomorrow, whatever that means. It's early. Today they wanted to leave like 7 minutes before 5 o'clock. Originally they said they didn't want to take lunch, and then all of a sudden they took an hour lunch, which is longer than the lunches they were taking throughout the trial. So with all the things that happened today, in light of what's happened previously to today, who had a better day, prosecution or defense?
Defense, shocker. I do believe that there's a holdout. I've always thought that from the questions they asked yesterday and their need to go. You know, jurors have a need to be sure. This is a very conscience-filled duty that they have, and this is a man's life that they're talking about, and of course a woman's life that has already been taken. So I think today they went there, they got in the car, they had the gun, they got a chance to answer their questions, and I believe tomorrow morning, this part of the trial, this part of the team will be really happy. So we'll see you there tomorrow.
I respectfully disagree with my friend in pink and black. I'm definitely going to go with the prosecution, and the reason why is after the questions yesterday, you would have thought that today the jury would have come back. And every prosecutor knows when a jury comes back very quickly, it's not necessarily good for us. But I'm going to tell you, because they took the time to listen and watch that video of what Tex McIver said happened, and then go down there into that vehicle themselves to see, this is a good day for the prosecution. One more day of deliberations.
All right, I'm going to agree with one of the pink ladies. I'm going to agree with LaTonya, and this is why. Again, it's all context. I thought we were going to be here today talking about a verdict, and that verdict would have gone this way based upon what happened yesterday. But I think we right now are in role reversal world. We've got a prosecution team that wants this jury to hang, because I don't think you're turning them around. If they were that close yesterday, you're not turning them around. You want the ones who are holding out to hold their ground, so you can either try this case again, work out some plea, and not walk out of that courtroom with a not guilty verdict. So I'm going to say today, and any day there is not a not guilty verdict from this day forward, is a prosecution win. And that's all because of that note that came down yesterday. So I still think it's advantage defense, but today I think it was a better day for them. Hey, great job, folks. Great questions, great input as always. Don't forget the Verdict Watch will continue tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. You can watch it on 11 Alive, 11 Alive's YouTube page. You can watch it on Vinny Politan 11 Alive on Facebook. We'll have live reports popping up whenever, and you don't know whenever. Maybe I'll be down at the courthouse with the ladies. You don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen, so you got to tune in to do that. Also, get the 11 Alive app, and you'll get an alert when there is a verdict. You know, wherever you are in the country, you can download the app. Go to 11 Alive on your little app thing. It's the number 11 and the word alive, the 11 Alive app, and you will get an alert when the verdict is reached, so you can run to your phone, run to your computer, and watch the verdict with me live. So thanks so much to my dream team, Mo Ivory and LaTonya Hines, and thank you to you at home. I'll see you at 11 o'clock on the late feed. More highlights and analysis tonight. In the meantime, we'll see you later.